Hello everyone and anyone unfortunate enough to have stumbled onto this video for reasons unknown. Perhaps you were looking up the terms garbage and Saints Row. Well, you have found the video that will give you just that. I am Philiqui, the maker of this here garbage, and I'll be giving you my thoughts on a piece of garbage called Saints Row. Alright, that's not fair. It's not garbage, but it sure isn't hard to find negative reviews for this game just about anywhere you look on the internet. In fact, the negative reviews were the reason I bought and played this game. Was it the new direction of the game? Did the technical problems finally accompany that usually accompanies a Saints Row game finally catch up to it? After pouring some hours into this game, because what else is a jobless bum going to do with his time? I can confidently respond to those two questions and say that the new direction is not appropriate to what I was expecting from this series, and the technical problems are still there, albeit not as bad as before. To elaborate, I'll begin with the technical problems because they're not all that bad. As I just said, they are there, but I didn't encounter any serious issues where I had to either force quit the game or find some kind of workaround. Oh, except for the issue with getting my controller to work with the game, but that was resolved without much of an effort by simply apparently turning on the controller and then starting the game, but not connecting the controller physically to my computer because that somehow messes up with the controllers with the I don't know the key bindings. I have no idea how it actually solved, but it was solved. There was also the occasional wonky NPC movement or unfinishable mission because the enemies spawned just outside of the mission area, but these didn't seriously hinder playing through the game. Just minor annoyances. To be clear, I was not bug hunting the game. I stuck with playing the main storyline, some side quests, and the Empire missions, and overall the experience was fairly smooth, technically speaking. So, again, technically speaking, the game worked just fine, which, thinking back at some of the previous entries in this series, at least my experience with them, this is a positive. In fact, I bought the last Saints Row game, Saints Row 4? Yeah, as whatever presidential edition on Nintendo Switch, and the I couldn't even get that one to work because I finally figured out that you have to keep doing barrel rolls while you're on a spaceship so that the game won't crash. But I mean that's something else entirely. Let's stay on focus here with the all new and improved question mark Saints Row game. All right, now to dive into the, I suppose, new, but a better term could be tamed direction of the game. I just don't get it. Saints Row as a series has produced increasingly over the top zany games where you could beat people over the head with a giant dildo as you move through an increasingly ridiculous story that makes the bare minimum of sense, but it fitted into the wackiness of the world that it presented. This game presents a ridiculous story, but it no longer fits into the world presented. The characters have rent problems, but they are literally pulling off successful robberies of armored trucks. Basic any of the things that they're doing in that game would be enough to solve their rent problems, particularly for the room that they were living in. But well, okay, that aside, my favorite, and I say that completely sarcastically because sometimes it's hard to pick up on that kind of thing, was when I had to go around town looking for some kids meal toy for one of the main Saints members. Okay, that's fine, I guess. That could be made fun. I th- if it didn't boil down to go here, kill this group, toy is not there. Okay, now go here, kill this group, toy is not there. Repeat, and eventually you'll find the toy, or I think it was a box of them, but I really didn't care. Or, and my god, I hated these. Put some receivers on top of towers that can only be reached by climbing other towers and then using a difficult to maneuver wingsuit to breach the tower where you have to plant the receiver. Sounds super exciting, does it not? No. What happens if you miss? Tough bricks. Go back to the other tower you started from and try again. Or do as I do and ignore it completely. Rarely have I played a game where I simply say, nope, not even worth the time I specifically devote to play this game. Oh, another one of my favorites, again, sarcasm, is driving around a toxic waste truck to the toxic waste facility. What is the catch? You have to drive really carefully because if you don't, the highly unstable drums of radioactive waste you are hauling around will explode. Truly a stroke of brilliance on the developers end, because that is exactly what I want to do in games like this. Drive real careful like. To be fair, this game is not the only game that is guilty of this, but this series has been going on for a while, and to see them put the drive carefully missions in such an unentertaining, unimaginative fashion is, well, disappointing. What I just find mind-boggling about this game is that it takes the over-the-top theatrics and antics of the recent entries and leaves what feels and looks like a bare-bone open-world game that can't decide how seriously it wants to take itself. The main storyline seems to be about friendship, trust, and I suppose entrepreneurship, which in and of itself could be a good core to build a story on. But what the game gives you is a bland tale of four friends who have a very ambiguous relationship with a purposely ambiguous main character. What I mean by this is that there is nothing about the main character that gives him any kind of unique attachment to his friends, let alone to the player. To his friends, he is simply good friend. To the player, well, he is completely interchangeable at just about any point of the game. It does not matter in the slightest how your character looks like. And I get it. This was kind of a thing in previous Saints Row games, but it is still something I have no fondness for. When a game accounts for the player's appearance, it makes the game world seem that much more responsive to the player and his actions, and this game could have really benefited from increased responsiveness. Now, to be fair, the expected level of responsiveness is there. The police will eventually respond to murderous or destructive rampages, rival gangs will respond to being attacked, and everyone else will flee in terror when you begin to deal damage with your piece. However, all of that is to be expected from a game like this, and has been seen in the Saints Row series since its inception. So it's not something to be praised at this point. It's basically more of the same. You're not gonna praise something for doing exactly what it's done before, even if it's only slightly more refined than it was before. I guess you get plus, I don't know, you get some kind of check mark. You've added what you've added in previous entries. Good job. Now, I have been okay with games continuing what works, doing the same thing in the sequel, even a third entry. I mean, a fourth entry. We're talking about a fifth entry now. It's a little it gets underwhelming when it's the same thing continuously, and then you water it down. It's no longer something that you can say we included it because it's the heart of the series and it's what the people that play these games really like. And okay, fair. I suppose the Saints Row, like I said previously, the Saints Row series has certain expectations and you have to kind of live up to that idea. But at the same time, it's watered down and it's the same thing. It's a watered down version of what you've already given. So what is there to praise? You've done what you've done before, you've just done it worse. Another gripe I have with the game is how little is done with the Build Your Empire missions. Remember I talked about driving toxic waste around the city real careful like? Well, you unlock those missions after you build the Bright Future facilities. This facility provides a place where unnamed corporations can dump their radioactive waste. And what is your job? What does the person that just gave the funds to set up the facility do? Well, drive the trucks to transport the waste to the facility. Great. And they really just phoned it in on this one. After you build a dojo, which is supposed to be used to train the Saints, you have to go around and beat up on a rival dojo to muscle the Saints into the protection business. What does this consist of in practice? Just go to spot A, beat up a bunch of unarmed rival dojo members, and repeat 5 times to complete this line of missions. Now, not all the Build Your Empire missions are this repetitive and, well, boring. Wait, no, yep, they pretty much are. They are all this repetitive and boring. The only one that I guess adds a unique flair to it is the one where you commit rival insurance fraud. You just kind of use your body as a rag doll and crash into vehicles. But I'm pretty sure I've seen that before, and even if I didn't, it really wasn't fun. It just it's kind of wailing your body in the air and trying to land on cars so that they'll explode and you get more money. And what's hilarious is in the game the NPC that is responsible for giving you these missions literally says, you do not have to do this. I can generate a code or whatever to get the money from the insurance companies, but still the main character says, I'm going to do it anyways, which is a whole thing I have with the main character, and I'll touch on it a little bit later. But what about the missions where you go around taking pictures of random stuff because it's part of a fashion designer's vision? Um, you must have enjoyed that, the developers might ask, and I will have to respond by saying no. I did not enjoy going around to random spots in the game to take a picture of random things, just like I had no interest in taking pictures of random things around the city to decorate my home base. Why did I not enjoy it? Because doing mundane tasks, such as going around the city and taking pictures, is not something I want to do in a game where I expect to drive around in a tank and destroy things. That being said, driving around in a tank and destroying things has been seen and done. So, and while I still find it enjoyable, there is nothing there that sets it apart from other games where, heck, even other Saints Row titles where you could do the same thing. So it is a good thing that they didn't remove it, but they did nothing of note to enhance or in any meaningful way improve the experience. Oh, I suppose there was the AI tank. But how do the AI tanks and non AI tanks differ in this game? In practice, they do not. They function just the same. At least the game does have decent customization options for changing the appearance of your favorite vehicle. Unfortunately, I did not bother doing much of that as I found myself flying a helicopter everywhere I went. Why? It was just faster and easier to get around with it. And yet another gripe, are the special abilities that the player earns as he levels up. They do little to enhance the gameplay. I found myself just shooting at everything that came my way. I did use the special abilities at times, specifically the one that made your melee damage increase, but the rest just weren't necessary to get through even the heaviest of combats. They seemed more like, I don't know, stuff that you could use if you wanted to experiment, but not necessarily stuff that you would use because it's required in the game in any way. It just seems extraneous to what the gameplay actually demands of you. All right, well, I've rambled on long enough. I'll wrap it up with a few closing words because they are going to close the video and hence they are closing words. When you use the name of an established franchise, it comes with certain expectations that are carried over from previous entries in that franchise. It would be one thing if they tried to take the franchise in a completely different direction, but that is not what is happening in this game. It seems like they wanted to keep it simple, a return to basics, I suppose. While I understand the idea, particularly after the fever dream that was Saints Row 4, the execution was not there. What could have been a solid initiation of a renewed series, it was 2013 that Saints Row 4 was released, is plagued by an uninteresting cast of characters, equally uninteresting story, repetitively boring missions, limited world engagement and interaction, and just overall bland gameplay that has been seen from this series before and in some entries better. And it's not fair to say that because you had previous work, you should be able to produce that quality of work now. You will have slip ups, but when you have slip ups and you use the name of the series that people have come to know a certain level, have certain expectations for, you're going to be dinged for it. What does this boil down to in terms of a numerical score? A 3 out of 5. A score that acknowledges that this is a self-sustained single-player game, which I have a preference for, but this is an established developer working on the franchise that they are most closely associated with. And instead of producing an exceptional or even above average product in comparison to what is already out there and what they themselves have already put out there, they produced an underwhelming run-of-the-mill experience that felt like a chore getting through. It also doesn't help that I spent a full $60 on this game. Of course they were going to charge $60 for it. They are an established developer, and this is their marquee game. I imagine it would be a concession that there is something wrong for them to price it as anything lower than a top-tier game would demand, which is fine, but then you have to actually deliver on that expectation and standard. Unfortunately, Volition did not.